We're now going to hear from Melissa Buntine, who's the principal consultant from TimeWise, talking about flexible, friendly working and ensuring the provision of family-friendly options. Over to you, Melissa.
Hi, thanks, Claire. Right, I'm just going to share my screen, so bear with us while we just do this. Okay, so hopefully you can all see my slides. So I just caught the end of Claire from CIPD talking, so I hope we're not going to have too much of a crossover. But even if we do, it's quite good to just keep reinforcing the same points, I guess. So yes, I'm from TimeWise, and so if you haven't heard of TimeWise, I've just got a few things to go over here. We look at lots of research and campaigns. So we look at insights for employers and policymakers to stimulate the action and grow that quality, flexible jobs market. We run a lot of pilot initiatives. We have an innovation unit, so we do quite a lot of really deep, long-term projects within the market. Things like just done one for a few years on nursing and nurse rostering. We just launched one with construction, seeing how we can make a really tricky sort of sector a bit more flexible, looking at some part-time apprenticeships. So we do a lot of really quite deep research in that area. We do change programs predominantly, look at how we can really support employers make those changes, doing some diagnostic work at the beginning, looking at where people are currently, where they want to get to, and sort of making that change along the way. And we also have a platform, a flexible jobs job site, TimeWise Jobs. So we have thousands of people registered on there looking for flexible work, and we have thousands of jobs, which are really brilliant high-end sort of roles. So if you have a tricky position that you can't fill, let us know, and we'll pop it onto TimeWise Jobs for you, so that you can actually get you know, such a bigger pool of candidates as well. So we do quite a lot of things. We're around quite a lot. So just really, who wants to work flexibly? This is just to go over, but and these are stats from before COVID actually. So 84% of men, as well as 91% of women. We just want to sort of highlight that there is that demand across genders. I know we have some male speakers, lots of things today. So we just want to highlight flexible working. A lot of men need to do this and want to do this as well. And as well as just men, we look at all the generations. So we've actually got 5 generations in the workplace, surprisingly, at the moment. And each of those has a different sort of focus, something that they require flexible working for. So it's really just to point out, flexible working and TimeWise, we're not sort of hammering the message that we're just here about getting mums back to work after maternity leave. That's not really what flexible working is. We want to really push these points out that there are all of these generations working. Men are wanting it almost as much as women. So we need to actually cater for this whole area. At the bottom there in the boxes, you can see the sort of different titles we have sort of given to these. And a lot of our workforce is sort of in the middle, this sandwich generation, which everyone's probably finding as well in the last 6 months, a bit more than normal. So you're finding that you are working and you're caring up for your parents and relatives maybe, and you've also got children yourself and you're caring from both sides. So you are sort of sandwiched in the middle there. And, you know, a lot of our work, the largest generation in the workplace actually is that generation. So you know, that's something to just consider. We're not looking at just making it flexible for maternity leave and things like that. Again, on the other end, on the left hand side, we're looking at that staged retirement, because we don't want people to just retire overnight and that's it, going from full time to nothing, burning out until you get there, working flat out. So how can we actually make it easier for organisations to hold on to that great amount of experience and maybe phase that retirement out, giving flexible working in the last however long if people are looking for that area. Okay. So I'm not going to read all of these out. You can have a look at it while I'm talking, but just again, in the flexible world, the demand is enormous, and a lot of these stats on the left are from before COVID. So if we think 87% of UK employees either work flexibly or that they would like to work flexibly, that's enormous if people are already working it and if they want it. Okay. And then on the right hand side, sorry you can't quite see because of the box here, but we're hearing that HR directors are expecting 70% of the workforce to have some form of flexible arrangement after the restrictions are fully lifted, which is actually a 45% increase. So we are going to have to work around this. We're going to have to work and actually look at how can we make everything a lot more flexible and a lot more easier. So again, with the employees that are either working flexibly or they would like to at the moment, I often get the question, well, if so many people are already working flexibly, surely we don't need to carry on lobbying this. Surely if there are so many people working flexibly, what's the problem? And from our perspective, the problem is those flexible roles they're quite low end. So a predominant amount of those roles are very low level flexible positions that people will take because they need to have a flexible job, and they will be sacrificing their skills and their salaries in order to have that, and then they'll get stuck in that level. So they won't have that career progression. So we're looking at really good flexible working, okay, and that demand that's there. So where does it work then? We've got your organisation, we've got the individual, what they need. If it's too far on the left, the organisation's needs, nobody's going to be able to have any flexibility, any adaptability. It's all about what the organisation needs. But then on the right-hand side, we're not encouraging organisations to say that you have to say yes to everything. You can't do that from an organisation perspective. There are, you have a purpose as an organisation, you have things that need to be met. So if it's not going to meet your organisation's needs, you can't really work around that in that respect. So we have to find that sort of sweet spot in the middle there where the flexibility works, looking at how we can actually tweak that and accommodate that through a variety of different ways. So these types of flexibility, how can we actually get to that bit in the middle then? At time-wise, we look at the where, the when, and the how much. So like Claire was saying earlier as well, there isn't just one sort of flexibility. It's not one flexible working, isn't it? A few years ago, even still a few years ago, people sort of thought that a flexible working job was just 3 days a week in the office, but it's not. So we need to look at how we can actually tweak as much as we can. So the where, the remote working, where is somebody actually working? Are they occasionally working from home? Is it an informal arrangement? Are they going to go to satellite offices, other offices? Like I said, some of our work, we're working with the NHS quite a lot. So all of the different sort of satellite sites that they have, different hospitals that people can actually go and log into, how can we make it easy? If you have a franchise, can we set up different areas? And is that an informal thing? Is that a formal arrangement? So where somebody's working is going to be quite, it's going to be quite a common one at the moment where people are thinking, how can we actually do this? Do we need to change our offices? Do we need smaller offices? Do we need bigger offices? How can we do this? Okay. When somebody's working, so it's important to say you can still be at home working full time. You can still be, doing your full time hours, but you could be at home doing it at maybe slightly different times. Maybe we've all done that over the last few months, started working at 6:30, 7 o'clock to get a few hours in before the kids get up, and then, having a few hours off when maybe homeschooling was happening. Maybe now back to the school run, having those sort of flexible start and finish times, we're still able to actually fit a full day in sometimes, just changing those hours that you're working. So could you look at that for, an organisation perspective? Could you look at that on a team level? Could we try and sort of swap the teams around, looking at when people are working? Could we maybe, rather than one very long day, could we have, 2 shorter shifts throughout it? Things like that. How can we actually change that in terms of job design? And then how much somebody's working, that is your classic part-time. Are you job sharing, are you job splitting? Are we having a lot more project-based roles at the moment? Not more sort of, maybe people are having 2 or 3 different projects on at once with different departments. How much is somebody working in that sense? So there are lots of, you know, ways that we can actually think about this. So creating those flexible teams then. So fairness and inclusion, so important. Fairness comes up in every workshop and every webinar that we run really. How can we make sure that it's fair across the board? These questions that will be coming in, you know, how do I know what's fair for one person? It's got to be fair for the whole team. But we need to really think about this and, you know, get together in your whole teams and get everybody on board, because fairness it's not really a principle. It's not really a set construct. It is more of a hypothetical thing. What's fair for me isn't fair for you necessarily, and you can't say that, okay, we're going to be fair now and everyone can work from home 1 day a week. That's not fair, because it's, you know, that's unfair for a lot of people that don't want to work at home 1 day a week. Maybe one person wants to work at home 5 days a week. So we have to really think about what's fair on an individual level. And then that inclusion piece, we're hearing the word inclusion and inclusivity. We're using that sort of interchangeably at the moment with flexibility. We're hearing that an awful lot from the workplace. So how can we make sure it's inclusive rather than the flexible word? So people really are starting to understand that it has to be inclusive, and making it inclusive is fair on lots of different levels. So, you know, don't just think of that one structure. That communication and cohesion, again, Claire went over this quite a lot earlier on. So that communication in the team is very important. We encourage teams to sort of have a team charter, have a team, you know, lots of team meetings, and keep that communication going on lots of different platforms, making sure that people are communicating. If they're at home and you're not hearing from somebody, if they're missing meetings and things, you know, don't just think that that person is taking the mick and they're not maybe communicating enough. It's, you know, there are lots of warning signs at the moment if people drop that communication. It's really hard line managing remotely. We do an awful lot of workshops with organisations on managing remote teams. How can you actually get that going when you can't visibly see people? This role of the manager is really important at the moment, because they're having to do an awful lot more. Your normal job, your normal line managing, and then if people aren't attending, you've really got to up your sort of psychological well-being and psychological communication as well at the moment, when we can't see people in the room necessarily. You know, bringing people together and making sure you are including everybody. Okay, and we have the trust. Tricky one, always a really tricky one. How can I trust if somebody's going to be working at home? Well, the same way that you trust that they're working if they're in front of you with their laptop on. You've got to sort of change how you're measuring things. You've got to start managing by output rather than hours, trusting that people will complete their roles, having that shift. So rather than working 7.5 hours in an office, you know, trusting that if they have 10 objectives to achieve that week, that they're meeting those objectives. You know, that's how you're going to build your trust. So from a line manager and a team perspective, change how you're actually laying your week out. Having that openness, making your calendars visible to everybody, having those calendars really up to date with every day going in. I suggest going in on a daily basis, really, making sure that your calendar is really visible. Then, you know, blocking out times that you might be taking children to school, blocking out time, maybe going to the chemist for next door neighbours, things like that, things that you do have to do during the day. At the moment, making sure that it's really visible that you are working, but not to the point of presenteeism, because we really want to step away from that. We do want to just sort of, you know, make sure that people are doing their roles, and we're able to see that from their outputs. And then the substitutability is really important. So something that we haven't really thought of in the last few years is if somebody in an office was to have COVID, and then suddenly we heard this a couple of weeks ago, an IT company, somebody had the virus, and then the whole company had to shield for 2 weeks. And it was really tricky, obviously, and it will be in every office. So, you know, having that in the back of our mind, to have your flexible teams, you need to be able to sort of slot people in and out and substitute people quite flexibly. Okay. So here are some top tips. Leading by example, obviously. Stand up, shout about it, do your storytelling, show how you're able to get this done. You know, really shine a light on people in your organisation that are able to be working flexibly before this pandemic and now as well. We call it leaving loudly. I don't know if you've heard that. Whereas in the olden days, I know when I had my children first, I would sort of log off really quietly, and you know, you get to the time that you want to leave early to go to the nursery to pick children up. But we don't want that anymore. If you're able to do your job, hands down, in the hours that you're working, the hours that you're there, you need to shout about it. We want to smash this presenteeism feeling. You know, the hours that you're working are your hours, and you know, you're not getting paid for other hours that other people are working. So leave loudly, visibly log off. You know, that's it. Okay, I'm done for the day. I'll be at home if anybody needs me for the next few hours or something. Just don't try and skulk out the fire escape and think that people are going to roll their eyes, because it doesn't have to be like that. Okay, so be upfront, things like that as well. Be open and honest about what your priorities are and if these are shifting. So on a team level as well, check in. Has your purpose changed as a team? Are you looking at a different set of objectives? Be upfront and, you know, continually sort of evaluate that, really. Show trust in other people, like I mentioned previously, and drive that conversation. So talk about your flexibility and your well-being. Bring it up in your one-to-ones and your team meetings. Like I said, try and have that communication on more than one platform. If people aren't attending a meeting because maybe they don't want a camera in their face all day long, nobody's really been quite used to that until this pandemic. All of a sudden, everyone has to be visible, don't they? If people aren't enjoying that, you know, take that into account. Look at individual differences. Really try and manage on an individual level like that. How is it actually going to be better for each individual in your team? Maybe meetings with cameras off if they feel a bit more comfortable. Maybe, you know, getting out for a walk and just actually having a phone call with somebody, an old-fashioned phone call, checking in on them. Really drive that conversation in how you think it's going to be beneficial with your teams as well. So be accessible and expect the same. So, you know, like I'm saying, with managing your calendars and having that all laid out, having your regular one-to-ones in there and be accessible for people to actually contact you. Let them know that you are still there, even if you're busy, you still sort of are able to be contacted as well. Create spaces in your diary. I heard last week actually an organisation gave everybody an extended lunch break for the next month, where from 1 till 3 o'clock they had a 2-hour lunch, and they were encouraging people to go out for a walk and actually, you know, catch up and create those spaces in their diary that is really going to help everybody. So prioritise that collaborative time as well, team meetings, and review everything that's happening. It's not a silver bullet. Flexible working, it is going to adapt. It is going to be very fluid. The next, you know, we're not through this pandemic. The next 18 months is probably going to be a lot of change. It's an ongoing disrupted period. So, you know, let's review everything that we're doing. Let's learn from it, keep things, and set clear things that we want to actually get rid of and things that we want to follow up on. Just a bit on the leadership shadow. So just if you are a line manager, then standing, wherever you're standing is going to cast a shadow. We call it the leadership shadow. And in effect, that is sort of the culture that you're creating. So just really quickly on this slide, what you say is going to have an effect, how you act, what you prioritize, and what you measure within your work. That is going to have a real shadow on how the sort of culture of your team is behaving and what you're expecting your values to be moving forward. So really do sort of, check yourself sometimes and think, how am I doing this? Is it really going to have a big impact in a positive way, and try and encourage the same behaviour. So just quickly then, a bit on flexible hiring that Claire mentioned as well. We are really wanting the legacy of COVID to be that we are having a lot more flexible hiring. There's a very small percentage at the moment, only 15% of jobs are actually advertising flexible hiring on them. So we're encouraging employers to openly advertise that they will consider flexible working options for new recruits at the point of hire, and build that into your recruitment process. So as well as your initial advertising attraction, look at how you can maybe create a different job description for somebody. At this point, we do a lot of job design and job redesign workshops. So when somebody's leaving, and we will have a lot of attrition over the next few years probably, use this as an example, as an opportunity. Grab that job description that was probably written 20 years ago, and is there anything that we can actually change from that? Don't just roll the same job description out. Don't just hire like for like. This is the point that we can really build flexibility into this recruitment process. Can we change that job in a way to make it a bit more flexible for people? Okay, and offer and have your induction and your trials, really have that as an open sort of evaluation process, because people might not like it. I think Claire said this as well. We ran a focus group with maternity support workers. One lady said that she really went on for a long time to get a part-time position, a more flexible role, and when she had it, she didn't like it. But because it had taken so long for her to actually get them to say yes, she was too shy to actually stand up and say, actually, it's not working very well. So really take that on board, and any changes that you make, they might not work. Let's be quite fluid about this. Let's build this all in. So communicate it in your job adverts then. So it's okay to include a statement at the bottom of a job advert, but quite often you see that and you don't really believe it. Sometimes you might just think it's there for being there. It's better to include a statement at the top, sort of welcoming those applications from people. And it's best if you specify the types of flex that you can actually offer for a role. Invite them to think about how they can actually perform if you get an application from somebody saying, this is how I work, this is how it's going to work. You know, that's really good, but it's best to actually give people that that idea as well. They might not think that you'd even thought about it. So if you're giving the idea, you're really going to open up your pool of candidates really widely and attract much better people. So that's really what I wanted to go over today. I've just had a question on the chat box, actually. I hope you can hear me. I've just had a question come in the chat box where somebody has asked about the team charter and could we expand on what this communication method involves. That really is what your team charter is. It's for you to sort of decide how you want that communication. So in terms of how it works as a team, like I was saying, we're looking at a lot of team-based exercises to get that flexibility rather than just with one person. How can it actually fit on a team level? So a lot of jobs aren't just individual, obviously, it takes the whole team. So you might need a telephone station manned, a frontline service manned from different times in the day. You know, pull your team together. How can we actually do this on a team base? Get everybody's involvement, ask everybody what they think they can do in terms of that level, but also in terms of how they want the team to be, how they want it to feel, how do they want the communication to be, and what do they think is best as a team. Can you ask the teams to sort of review any purpose at the moment? And I think we all know that if you ask somebody to set their own targets, they usually exceed those targets. So if you're doing that on a team base and you're getting your team on board, you're really overcoming a lot of objections as well, because people will have their own input, and you'll find that other teams are able to follow that as well in suit. So yeah, we do suggest sort of drawing it up as a team charter and somebody taking responsibility for it. Yeah, give it a go, see if it works.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It's a wonderful presentation and some great interesting points about providing that flexible working from beginning through to the end, and with a sustainable view for business, as well as you know, the broad range of ways in which to think and face it and deal with it. One question I had, if you don't mind, was a really interesting point about accepting low-level jobs and sacrificing skills and progression. So can you speak to some of the things that employers can do then so people don't get stuck? You already spoke about the lady who took a part-time job and it didn't really work. What other things can support employees to not get stuck in that position?
Well, initially, that's a really good question, and we do get asked that a lot as well. Initially, rather than leaving it up to your employees to bring it to you, we really encourage managers to be proactive and ask the question themselves. So in any review, any seasonal review, any evaluation and appraisal, you know, we're asking them to get up front for them to sort of proactively, like we're saying with our job advert, give people the idea and see if they what they're actually looking for, so they feel that they can. Because there is that stigma still, and people still sort of think that your company's going to be doing you a favor if you ask, you know, if they let you work flexibly, but actually you're coming to them with all of these skills. They're probably saving a bit of money because they're paying you 20 hours, not 35 hours. So, you know, they're not doing it, it's not really a favor, that it's from both levels. With that as well, we encourage people. I look at job adverts that people are actually putting online, because we work with organizations that say, oh no, we're really open about it, but they're not. They just put a tiny thing at the bottom saying we will accept applications for other hours, or something, you know, really something that just wouldn't make you think that that's really true. So we're encouraging people to get out there right at that point and see how they could actually offer that. People getting trapped, and it is trapped, people get trapped in a role and they feel that they can't ask. And with the job applications as well online, quite often that I see still now flexible working as a benefit, and it's clumped in with, like, I don't know, pension plan, company car, flexible working. You think, hold on, that's not a benefit, that's a business benefit as well. It's a benefit for you as a business, because I'm coming with all of these skills. I know how it's going to work. So, you know, don't think of it as a benefit that somebody's working flexibly for them as an individual, and just get out there and see how you can do that.
Great, really interesting, and really flying the flag for those family friendly and flexible working policies. So I really appreciate that. We've got a few minutes now, 4 minutes before we go to a break. Does anyone like to come through? There's another question come through on the chat here. Sorry, I've just, from Kelechi. The number of unpaid carers have increased because of the pandemic. Some are unable to work from home because of their hands-on full-time care without much support, which has never been the case before. So how can organisations support people in this current situation? Thank you for your question.
That is so hard. And we're going to lose a lot of people. We're really worried about this. We're going to lose a lot of people from the workforce for these reasons. And we know that there is especially a knock-on effect on women. You know, they're doing 2/3 at the moment. It's a very, very hard area. I can't really comment on what organisations are going to, that's going to be, you know, on a really organisational level, what they're able to do in terms of, you know, the furlough pay and the reducing hours and things. Something that we have seen as well is that a lot of organisations are, you know, reducing the hours that people are working. So rather than working full time, making it sort of 2 days a week, and maybe you can do those 2 days at different times of the day, like I was saying as well. It doesn't have to be in the core hours. So seeing if you're able to do those caring responsibilities alongside maybe just a reduced hours initially for however much of a period, but it is going to be very disruptive. It is, yeah, sorry, that is really hard with the caring. But like Claire said as well, I think she was talking about building your open cultures. It's not, at the moment, this isn't normal working from home. If anybody's working from home and you've never worked from home before, this isn't what normal working from home is. It won't be like this forever. This is being at home in a crisis and trying to work, really. So that caring side as well, if it gets to a stage that that's an ongoing thing, then that's going to have to, you know, you'll have to have some sort of formal change with your working and seeing. I think this is a good test as well, isn't it, obviously, for flexible working, to see how you can keep some of these different flexible ways that we've seen as well over the last few months. Yeah.
Yes, it's very tough. As you were saying, organisations can do so much, but it's also including greater support from wider services, which are, you know, or not always easy to come by and not always available. So yeah, I appreciate that. It's limited, but yes, certainly in these challenging times, organisations need to be not losing people at the rate that sometimes in some areas we have seen so far. Okay, thank you very, very much, Melissa.